Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have full review of the OnePlus 13. Let's start. This is a flagship device, I think not yet at the level of the most expensive flagships of all manufacturers, but definitely that is positioned in a high-end segment. However, OnePlus usually works a little tighter prices. But in this generation, the price has not been so low. At least in Mexico has been launched at a price of 23,999 pesos. That is approximately $1,175. So you have a reference. This in its only configuration of 16 GB of RAM with 512 GB of storage. Though for launch, if they applied an interesting promotion that reduces the price to 20,999 pesos, which I think would be a price more in line with what OnePlus usually offers us. At this price, I think it will be more interesting, but at the launch price, it has a very strong problem, and is that in many ways, it resembles and shares many things with the Oppo Find X Pro, but the Oppo device, which is its sister brand, even has an additional telephoto camera that provides you with a better range. And as I mentioned, in almost every other aspect, it will be a very similar experience. Therefore, keep a close eye on the Oppo Find X Pro if you truly like this device, because if the price difference is not too significant, I would definitely recommend choosing the Oppo device. I must emphasize, OnePlus and Oppo are sister brands, so they share nearly everything. However, OnePlus has the disadvantage that its distribution is more limited, so at least in Mexico you can only find it in online stores with official distribution, Amazon and Mercado Libre. Let's start with the design, where we will find very small bezels around this glass, which by the way is 4 curves, which gives a nice aesthetic touch, but also a nice touch use, as long as you do not have placed a mica. Although by default brings glued mica, so the feeling of swipe around, that screen is not so nice with this accessory in place. But in addition to the mica, includes a glass called ceramic guard, which in theory should give a good level of resistance, although we are not sure how hard it can be. For that we would have to see perhaps drop tests or comparative, and I do not dare to throw this device, but at least if it has some level of protection on the screen. On the right side, we are going to find the volume buttons along with the power button, all within this aluminum frame that looks very attractive. It's not only for its reflective metallic aesthetics, but it also feels premium and resistant. On the top, we will find the microphones and also the infrared, along with a secondary audio output. Then on the left side, we will find the alert slider, which allows us to set the device to silent, vibration mode or sound, and it certainly gives it a special touch. It's also quite pleasant to use the cell phone. At the bottom we will find the tray for dual SIM cards. We will also find 2 additional microphones along with the USB-C port, and finally the speaker, which has 2 perforations. This device has a thickness of 8.9 mm, so it is not ultra thin, but within the high end it is positioned correctly. Its weight is 210 grams. The use is fairly comfortable, especially since the back cover is made of synthetic leather that feels soft to the touch and provides a very good grip as well. I personally enjoyed it a lot. In this particular case, it is the Midnight Ocean Color Edition. However, it is also available in the Arctic Down Color and finally the Black Eclipse. The last 2 versions are made of glass, so if you prefer the edition with synthetic leather, you will need to choose the Blue Edition. This version comes paired with the camera module in a pearl shade, which I find very nice. However, it will always depend on each person's individual taste. An important fact in terms of resistance is that it has IP68 and also IP69, so it not only resists being submerged to a depth of 1.5 meters, but would even resist jets of hot water. So it should not be a problem to use it in pools or in the sea, although remember that these levels of resistance are achieved with tests in pure water. So it is advisable to rinse it with pure water and not submerge it too deep if you use it in pools or in the sea. However, in general, the design stands out as a strong flagship, showcasing great aesthetics and impressive durability. The screen is another feature that excels at a very high level. To begin with, it boasts a substantial size of 6.82 inches diagonally, made possible by the ultra-thin bezels it incorporates. Additionally, the resolution is exceptionally high at 3168 by 1440 pixels, resulting in a pixel density of 510 pixels per inch. It means that everything will appear extremely sharp, including text with very small letters, not to mention multimedia content like series or movies. Everything will look exceptionally sharp. Additionally, it features a mold technology which, as you know, results in vivid colors and extremely high contrast, just as you would expect from a high-end screen. Moreover, the configuration offers 3 calibration modes, allowing you to choose between a more intense or less saturated color palette, although it doesn't offer much in terms of adjustment. More specific parameter by parameter, but if you have a manual adjustment of the color temperature of the screen, in addition to the adaptive tone option that allows somehow mimic the white color of the screen with the white of the environment, although I have tested it and it is useful when the environment is warm. For when the environment is cold at times does not adapt very well. The screen also includes a sharpness enhancement engine for images that are not of high resolution, although it is turned off. By default, there is a video optimizer that can convert SDR videos to HDR for an enhanced viewing experience. This feature is initially turned off, but you have the option to enable it if you wish to enjoy your content in higher quality. However, keep in mind that it will consume more battery. As you have already noticed, this screen is capable of supporting HDR content, Dolby Vision, and other similar technologies. It achieves a peak brightness of 4500 nits when viewing certain content, providing a great deal of realism. Remember that these peak brightness levels are achieved in certain parts of the screen. Overall, it doesn't maintain this brightness everywhere, but it's bright enough for excellent outdoor viewing. The minimum brightness is comfortable for evening use. However, it lacks an extra dimming mode that could be beneficial, and you might miss it. The display features a refresh rate of up to 120 Hz with LTPO technology, allowing it to drop to 1 Hz. Additionally, the display is a good balance between good battery consumption and great fluidity, so wherever you look, the screen will be really very good and there is nothing to complain about it. Just note the absence of the extra attenuation. Regarding the sound, the experience is positive because of the good sound it has, because it is stereo and has good presence of bass frequencies and good volume, although at the highest level. Perhaps the mid-bass frequencies, I would like to lower them slightly. And in this particular case, we encountered an obstacle because there is no equalizer available for the speakers, which is a disadvantage when compared to other competitors. In this situation, it includes technologies like reality audio that somewhat replaces the surround sound of Dolby Atmos. However, it does include an equalizer, but it is exclusively for headphones. So, let's proceed to listen to a brief test of the speakers, but please keep in mind that it's not the same as listening to it live. The headphone experience is further enhanced with the spatial audio feature, which provides head tracking when using compatible headphones. Additionally, it incorporates technology such as holo audio, which further enhances the headphone experience. However, as you probably know, it lacks a headphone jack, which is typical for this range. Therefore, if you wish to use headphones without any latency, especially for gaming purposes, you will need to use a USB-C adapter. And if you are looking for headphones to enjoy music with excellent quality, there's great news because this device supports all the codecs you might want, ranging from the basic ones to more advanced ones like LHDC, aptX Adaptive, and LDIC. Therefore, any pair of headphones you own that offers high-resolution audio will work perfectly with this device. As for the microphones, it includes a total of 4, which is really beneficial since some of them will be utilized for noise cancellation purposes. Let's take a moment to listen carefully to a test.
Esta es una prueba de audio grabada utilizando los micrófonos integrados de este OnePlus 13.
The microphones are definitely going to have good audio pickup. In fact, on the voice recorder, it also includes an option to have directional audio, so it doesn't pick up from both sides. It just picks up towards the direction in front of you, which could also be useful for calls. It also has a clear voice function, so thinking everything that has to do with your voice is fine. Let's test these microphones in a noisier setting now. If you could notice, it seems to take a little while for it to adjust its gain. so perhaps in the first few moments, the audio might be perceived as slightly distorted. It's not really serious, but over time, I think it improves possibly by adapting its gain. So even in concerts, I would say it's a good tool to use. And finally, in this block, the vibration motor is positioned on the X-axis to provide you with this premium feel that is required in the high-end devices, so it complies very well and even has an adjustment feature. The intensity control is software controlled, so you can choose how strong you want to feel this tap on your hand, which by the way is very well optimized with various aspects of the operating system. So when you scroll through the list of recent apps or when you choose some brightness slider and things like that, you're going to feel this very premium little vibration in your hand. Front camera is 32 megapixels with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. For this camera, the Sony IMX6115 sensor is used. That is, it's a simple sensor. You don't expect a very high quality camera here on the front, even though it has high resolution. To quickly open the camera, you can double press the power button and notice that it opens very quickly. And this gesture not only works when you have the device locked, but even if you are in any other application and suddenly want to open the camera, there you go. I really like this feature a lot. Actually, if you have the device with the screen locked, you can also double tap any of the volume buttons to activate it, although this option is turned off by default. Alternatively, you can draw a letter or shape on the screen, which will also activate it, but these gestures are disabled by default. Here's a demonstration that shows more or less how quickly and smoothly the camera responds to the front. So in that sense, the experience is indeed very good. We will also discover the option to capture pictures with movement. This feature records a short video clip just before taking the picture. Additionally, at the bottom, there is a button that allows us to view some effects in real time. Moreover, we can apply facial retouching effects. There is a default setting available, or you can choose to modify each parameter individually. Each parameter comes with its own intensity modifier, allowing you to adjust anything on your face as needed. If you find it necessary, note that it also has 2 levels of wide, as it's a relatively wide camera, but you can crop a bit. You have access to the self-timer in the menu that is hidden, and in the full settings we will also find the method of capturing with the palm or by touching any area of the screen, which can facilitate the capture of group shots when you have your arms stretched to the maximum and it is difficult to reach the shutter. It's important to note that this camera also comes with an exposure compensation feature. So, if you find yourself in a dimly lit environment and notice that the camera is overexposing to capture more light, you can easily adjust it. This allows you to reduce the exposure and keep it consistently fixed while you're snapping multiple photos. The front-facing camera provides a commendable level of detail, which is great because it doesn't disappoint in that aspect. However, I did observe that the picture could use a tad more contrast than what it offers, and the colors don't seem as accurate as I would prefer. It has 2 width levels, 21 or 25 mm, using sensor cropping. It has fixed focus, which is a downside, but even with your arm extended, it keeps good face focus, so it's not a big issue unless you want a very close face detail where it won't focus well. In backlit scenarios, it's important to note that the preview doesn't seem well optimized. You might notice burned out areas, but once the image is processed, it balances highlights and shadows more effectively. In fact, in this particular scenario where there's a bit more shadow, we can observe better contrast within the image. However, the colors still aren't quite as accurate as one might hope. Personally, I feel that the Hasselblad touch isn't as noticeable here as it is with the rear cameras. Indoors, this front camera performs quite well, although it provides less detail than it does outdoors, which is quite evident. However, it still maintains a sufficiently saturated color. Interestingly, I prefer how this camera behaves at night, a scenario that is very challenging, yet it does a good job, even though the level of detail decreases compared to daytime. Here, we observe good contrast and noise control, making the night shots impressive, especially with an f-aperture of 2.4. The photography quality is excellent, not compromising quality for range like other devices. In night backlit situations, results remain positive, though the brightest area might not be perfectly exposed. But we must remember that it is a very complex photography. Even in portraits at night, we see a very nice result. Personally, I really like the bokeh effect that is applied in the background, although the face does have a bit of graininess that contrasts a bit with the clean experience we see in the autofocus area. So if you zoom in to see the details, you'll notice that it's not a perfect photo, but if you don't zoom in to see the details, it really looks like a very good photograph. And take note that during the day, we will also discover a very good treatment of portrait photographs, with the background being blurred quite well. Here, we can notice a bit more of Hasselblad's influence in the design of the background blur, while still maintaining excellent detail on the face. On the rear side, we will find a 15mm ultra-wide camera with an f2.0 aperture, and it also includes autofocus. The sensor is 50 megapixels and is an ISOCELL JN5. Then we find the 23mm camera, which is considered the main camera. It features an aperture of f1.6 along with autofocus and optical stabilization. In this situation, it integrates a 50 megapixel sensor, specifically the Sony Lithia 808, known for its very good quality. By applying a crop, you can achieve the focal length of 48mm. Next, we come to the third camera, which is 73mm. This provides an approximate optical zoom of 3 times, with an aperture of f2.6, autofocus, and optical stabilization. It also includes a high-resolution sensor of 50 megapixels. In this particular case, the Sony Lithia 600 also applies a crop on the sensor to provide you with a 146mm focal length. As you can see, this camera offers a very wide range in terms of focal lengths. In fact, it's important to note that when you click on these small buttons, you can also choose other crops like 28 or 35mm. Then, you can jump up to 48, 73, 85, and then go up to 146. This gives you a good range, although in this context, the Oppo Find X8 Pro, which I mentioned to you at the beginning, still has its own advantages. The camera offers a broader range, and it certainly values the sensors being highly optimized, allowing it to crop within this range while maintaining excellent optical quality. It's important to note the camera's agility is truly impressive, with its response speed being almost instantaneous. Additionally, it includes an automatic macro feature, so when you move closer, you'll observe a button appearing in the lower left corner, which you have the option to disable if needed. If you want to keep using the main camera, but automatically, you should switch to the ultra-wide camera. This way, you can take advantage of its autofocus capabilities and see how close it allows you to get to objects. In this section, we will also find the exposure compensation selector. Additionally, we will discover the option of taking motion pictures, and we have the action mode, which enables capturing movements that are better defined. We are also going to find in the lower right corner access to these color filters that we can visualize and apply in real time. A single facial retouching effect with a slider without as many parameters as on the front camera, and watch our tests of the capture. As for the speed, we tried to capture the number 3, but we constantly saw that it anticipated the moment of our press, so you don't need to be so worried about pressing at the exact moment. It supports a burst of up to 50 pictures, and consider that it takes about half a second or so to start. Plus, there is a big gap between one picture and another at the beginning. Although later it seems to go a little better, then the burst doesn't seem to be that amazing. Although in this case, by default, it has a sharp burst style that prioritizes image quality. If you want a snappier and faster burst, you can select Classic Burst, although the image may not look as good as it should, as sharp. You will notice that this device offers some interesting photo profiles such as scenery, silhouette, or fireworks. These options are designed to enhance pictures in specific scenarios where cell phone cameras, when set to auto mode, might overexpose and produce results that appear strange and artificial, not resembling real life. However, trust me, by using these presets, you will be capable of capturing very attractive pictures in these particular scenarios. Additionally, it incorporates a primary mode which, in my opinion, is poorly translated. I believe a more accurate translation would be a personal mode. Although it includes automatic adjustment, it's important to note that it provides us with manual parameters that let us fully customize the photograph to our preferences. We can choose the level of saturation, contrast, and sharpness, as well as decide if we want this vignette effect around. Furthermore, in the professional setting, you still have parameters like ISO and more, plus it offers raw photography settings, allowing full customization to maintain consistent color rendition in any scenario. I find this a valuable feature for photography enthusiasts. It supports ISO up to 3200 and the shutter speed up to 30 seconds for those interested in the specs. And you can adjust the manual parameters and settings in any of the 3 rear lenses. Before we check the results, let me share the camera experience. For scanning QR codes, it's quite good since you just point and shoot without opening another app. However, for documents, it won't auto-detect them. You need to switch to document mode, which also offers a translation option or lets you capture documents. And take note that it will automatically crop, and it allows you to add multiple pages, which can be quite useful in a variety of scenarios. Perhaps it would also be beneficial to have automatic capture as we observe in some other cell phones, but honestly I find it to be a great tool because it also lets you apply a color optimization effect. This makes it appear more like an advanced scanner and you can apply it to other pages. Then you have the option to save this document as a PDF or as images separate, so it's an incredibly useful scanner. The ultra-wide camera offers a very high quality, and I really appreciate how the photograph presents a strong contrast with well-defined shadows. It is something that Oppo and OnePlus have executed exceptionally well in collaboration with Hasselblad. In this particular case, being a photograph taken with the ultra-wide camera, we should emphasize that there are not too many distortions at the edges. It seems that there is a slight chromatic aberration, but it is not as severe as what we observe in other devices. The ultra-wide camera is of quite good quality, although it isn't as wide as some might expect. Next, we transition to the main camera, which maintains a color treatment that is very similar to the ultra-wide camera. This consistency between the two cameras is something I really appreciate. Additionally, I like how there is a strong contrast present, which effectively darkens the shadows just enough to ensure the image quality is good. Personally, I find this photograph to be very attractive, with tones that appear realistic and pleasing to the eye. Then it offers us a crop with 48 mm as if it were optical zoom 2x, and it must be said that if it retains this optical quality, just look at the mesh that is in the background. It seems to me that it looks very good level of detail, so it takes good advantage of the capabilities of this photo sensor. If we keep moving forward, we get to the 73mm camera, so up to here we have a short zoom range of very good quality, and obviously since we are talking about the telephoto camera, the level of detail will be, the ultra-wide camera is of exceptionally high quality, maintaining its essence of excellent color reproduction with adequate saturation, and a distinct contrast that results in a remarkably good level of photography. Up to this point, I am thoroughly enjoying absolutely everything about it. Moving on, we encounter the 6x setting with 146 mm, which applies a crop on the sensor. And the outcome is indeed an impressive photograph. Although its cousin, the Oppo Find X8 Pro, features a dedicated telephoto camera practically within the same focal length, which is why I mentioned that this device could potentially arrive to be the main competitor of this one. Despite this, with this focal length, which we could already consider a reduced zoom range, we will still observe optical quality with excellent detail and all the advantages I mentioned about this device's photography. Concerning the range of photos you can achieve, notice the difference. This is the main camera, followed by the ultra-wide camera, where we gain a lot of range. But also notice that in this case, the ultra-wide camera is the main camera. We can use the panoramic mode with the ultra-wide camera, so you could gain a tremendous range and maintains a good level of detail. In this sense, it complies very well. Let's talk now about the zoom range. In this case, you are looking at the ultra-wide camera, then the main camera, and the whole tour that we had already done previously, so you can see how it continues to maintain excellent quality up to this point where we are in 6x zoom, which, despite being digital zoom, you see, it functions almost like optical zoom, meaning the picture quality remains excellent up to this stage. And now when you observe the 10x zoom, you begin to notice slightly that it is indeed digital zoom. As the distance increases, you'll see that the zoom starts losing detail. In this regard, the Oppo Find X8 Pro, which shares many specifications with this device, performs better with long-range zoom. This is because, although it does offer zoom capabilities, it falls short compared to its cousin. The alternative choice available is an extremely exaggeratedly long zoom, and in this particular case, we are discussing a 120x zoom. In reality, it is a highly exaggeratedly forced zoom that will not provide us with a very high level of detail, and I would suggest that 20x is the maximum zoom where the quality remains sufficiently good. Therefore, in terms of long-range zoom capabilities, it falls somewhat short. Especially considering the price range it targets for competition, I believe that if the price were lower, it would be considered an extraordinary zoom feature. However, within this price range, I think the Oppo Find the 8 Pro, its cousin, performs better in long-range zoom. Let's quickly check another gallery of zoom photos. Notice how text often triggers more optimization, resulting in sharper or clearer images. In long-range zoom with clear letters or figures, you might see a positive difference. Indoors, the entire camera system appears to perform quite well to me. Notice that even the ultra-wide camera manages to control its noise effectively while maintaining good color and contrast. The other cameras will perform similarly, including the pictures with cropping inside the sensor. However, in this case, they lose a small amount of detail compared to what we observed outdoors. But notice how with each of the cameras, even indoors, we see good quality, which shows the excellent photographic quality that OnePlus has achieved with Hasselblad. In backlight, notice how the preview is perfectly well optimized, which I love, and the results will be just as good. Notice how with the ultra-wide camera we see a good balance of highlights and shadows. If you get too picky, perhaps the colors are not 100% accurate, but overall I think that the photography is quality. Although in this case we noticed a little more distortion in some areas of the photograph with this camera. But speaking specifically of the backlight treatment, it is very good. Although I close my eyes, if you are a little closer to the ultra-wide camera, note that you can get to light slightly better, even if you are in an area of shadows, but the result is still positive. With the main camera, we are going to observe an even better handling of color and contrast, and I really like the realistic outcome that we achieve. We continue with this camera, and with the telephoto camera, we persist in appreciating an excellent balance between lights and shadows, effectively avoiding areas that are overexposed or excessively dark. Even with the 6x zoom crop, we can see the same high quality, so backlighting poses no issues. However, I believe that at night is when this device is truly going to excel the most. Regarding the photographs, they are quite realistic and done excellently. It's important to note that in this instance, it's the ultra-wide camera, which typically is the weakest in most devices. However, in this particular case, it perfectly exposes the brightest areas. The darker areas, like shadows and darkness, are captured well without excessive noise, while still maintaining a very good level of detail. Honestly, I truly appreciated the quality of the picture. With the main camera, we see the same behavior, area of higher illumination, very well exposed, very good level of detail, without having noise present even in the darkest areas. So it really seems to me a very high level photography and very realistic. With the 40mm setting, if we are going to notice that it does not maintain optical quality as happened in the day, at night if you can get to notice that it is digital zoom. With the 73mm telephoto lens, we continue to observe the same exceptional quality of photography, which is quite remarkable, especially considering that the telephoto lens allows less light to enter. However, it truly is excellent. Additionally, with the 6x crop, just like with the 48mm crop, we will notice that it is perceived as a digital zoom. In this situation, these artifacts tend to appear, as is commonly known in photography, which do not convey the impression of a photograph of such high quality. Therefore, the image quality can suffer a little bit. At night, when there are clipping issues inside the sensor, the reality is that it is becoming quite demanding. I really believe it can compete toe-to-toe with any high-end device that you would want for night photography. Even in these scenarios where there is no light source present in the frame, we see a very positive and realistic result. Once again, this was on a cloudy day, and trust me, it looks quite similar to how it appeared in reality. Although, of course, this area is quite complicated to capture accurately. So you experience a bit of noise and graininess, yet the truth is that when you consider it's the ultra-wide camera, the outcome is quite impressive. With the main camera, once more, we observe a very good result, quite realistic with a color tone that closely matches reality. However, it has slightly more light than I would have preferred, but the level of detail remains excellent in these types of photographs. When we use the 48mm crop, we observe something quite similar to what we've seen before. However, when we switch to the 6x crop, we will notice once more that there is a slight loss of detail. Despite this, I must say that the night photography is overall very impressive. Trust me on this, the results are quite positive. Just take a look at the photos we could capture of the moon. They are definitely enhanced by artificial intelligence, yet the outcome can appear quite nice and pleasing to the eye. In fact, if you attempt to use the maximum zoom feature, you will notice that the moon can even extend beyond the frame, which means you won't be utilizing the maximum zoom for this purpose, usually. And this will be the result. For macro photography, the device is a very good exponent. As you see, it defaults to using the ultra-wide camera when you're in these kinds of small object scenarios, and the result is very nice with very even focus of excellent quality. This would be as close as you can get with the main camera, which also gives a very nice result, albeit with a much more focused focus on some specific distance, and the other objects or reliefs will come out of focus, or with a slightly blotchy style. The telephoto camera does not allow us to be so close. So it does not have telemacro capabilities as if we have seen, for example, in Huawei or Xiaomi devices of the high end. But remember that if you want to be as close as possible, you have to use the ultra-wide camera that gives good results and for scenes with movement, if there is good lighting. The ultra-wide camera captures these movements well, possibly. In the shadows, you are going to have slightly less defined results. With the main camera, it's going to perform better because it has a better aperture. So even in an area where there's not as much lighting, we're going to see that it captures motion scenarios very well. And the periscope camera, you notice that it's the one that gets to suffer the most because it can even confuse the focus a little bit, and if you use cropping on the sensor, you're going to notice that it even generates distortions in the movement in the shadows, yields quite a similar outcome. It's definitely not highly recommended, although the device does offer an action mode that can be activated. This feature is available on all cameras to help better freeze movements. It's important to note that in this case, it involves a crop on the sensor, which can result in a somewhat peculiar stain. The result may lack some detail, but at least the movements become more clearly defined when you activate this mode. The device also integrates a high-resolution mode, and I observe this would be the result with the ultra-wide camera, where it seems to me that if we see a high resolution, although it does not specifically translate into very detailed photographs, this usually happens with all ultra-wide cameras I've tested. The most appropriate for high-resolution photographs is to use the main camera, and in this case, if we perceive a high resolution with a very good level of detail, see how we can get closer. To crop the photo in other scenarios, and the detail remains clear. Even with the telephoto camera, this high-resolution mode provides a positive experience. There's no over-sharpening or anything, and the result is excellent. This device also includes an alternative photography mode called Main in this version. I think the translation isn't great, but it essentially lets you create your own profile of photography. So here, by default, the result appears like this, with slightly less contrast than the automatic mode, yet the shadows remain intriguing. But I emphasize, it entirely depends on your preference and how you wish to adjust the picture. For reference, this is the picture in automatic mode, showing a much stronger contrast. But I appreciate that the manufacturer offers this option to users of developing their own interpretation, ensuring that the pictures turn out precisely as they desire. And finally, regarding portrait photography, it's important to note that the device also performs quite well with the 23mm lens. However, portraits might appear somewhat unusual because it lacks a telephoto perspective, so I wouldn't highly recommend using that setting for portraits. But note that with the 48mm setting, we see again a very good quality if it is able to detect objects in the foreground to keep them in focus. There is a good level of detail in the face and the bokeh effect is positive. With the 73mm setting will be where you will have the best quality portrait photographs, not only because of a very nice bokeh effect, but because it also has a photograph with good contrast and good level of detail, maintaining all the positive things I had already told you about the close-up detection. You can even capture photos with a focal length of 85mm by cropping the sensor, and the outcome is truly impressive. I really enjoyed it a lot. I believe that the portrait photos taken with this device are of very high quality. Of course, it's not without a few drawbacks, but honestly, these details are noticeable only if you are very particular and examine every detail of the photograph. However, the overall result is very good. It is very nice, especially for the bokeh effect that I think they have worked very closely with Hasselblad, and the result is very nice. Here you are seeing another example simply with the 73mm setting, and here what I want to emphasize is that it detects my lens very well. Note that there are some devices that could be confused in this area. But this one does an excellent job, even in the hair area, which is usually very complex. The truth is that the portraits are of a very high level. And here's the final example to confirm the high quality of portraits captured by this device. In terms of video recording, there are undoubtedly positive aspects. The device supports up to 4K at 30 frames per second with the main camera, while the other cameras can also record in 4K at 60 frames per second, demonstrating excellent quality. What I would absolutely love to see would be 120 frames per second in 4K resolution, but unfortunately, that's not available at the moment. It's important to note that the video recording interface includes a button that allows you to enable blur mode, so it's crucial to take a detailed look at this section. This is because if you have that option enabled, even if you switch modes and then go back to video, it will remain enabled and can produce some strange results in your recordings. Therefore, always make sure you have this option turned off if you do not want your videos to appear blurry with the background. By default, it records with HDR turned on and Dolby Vision, giving very good quality, which we'll see in a moment. It also has exposure control adjustment, which is useful in various scenarios as well. It has an ultra steady mode, and as I told you, it has a nice selector for supported resolutions. You can also apply some color effects, but the resolution goes down to Full HD, so it's not so recommended to use it. And there's a button also for facial retouching, which is very useful in various scenarios. Also reduces the resolution to Full HD. In the additional settings, it's important to note that you have the ability to modify how you want the audio to be captured. For instance, if you prefer it to be more focused towards the front, you can adjust it accordingly. Additionally, when recording the video, it's worth mentioning that we have a very comfortable ring to navigate between the entire supported zoom range. Furthermore, there is a button to take pictures, another button to pause and resume recording, and yet another button to turn the flashlight on and off in real time. One thing you cannot do is rotate the front camera during a video recording. You have to stop the video first. In this scenario, it also includes a movie mode, allowing you to adjust manual parameters. Unfortunately, it will always use this ultra-panoramic format. Therefore, if you wish to change the manual parameters of the video recording, you cannot record in a more standard or regular format. Moreover, it doesn't support log recording or other professional features. It merely provides a viewfinder for the histogram, a grid, but I think that in this aspect it falls short compared to others. The video recording is of excellent quality. You have to consider that it records in HDR, so you are watching the video converted to SDR. So it is not exactly the same video that was recorded, but you would need a monitor compatible with HDR to see the 100% of the quality of this device. The result is very attractive. With either camera we found a good level, although unlike photography. In zoom settings at intermediate 2x, you'll notice the digital zoom is quite obvious. However, when you increase to the 3x lens, the video quality improves significantly. It not only offers good detail, but also excellent color rendition. The exposure and white balance remains stable, though the focus might briefly slip at times, but it's not a major issue. Indoors, the quality will still be good. However, with the ultra-wide camera, you might notice a bit more noise and graininess in some areas. In fact, even with the main camera, there is a slight presence of noise and graininess, but it's nothing too serious. The image quality remains impressive, especially regarding color and its intensity. Even when using the zoom camera, we will observe a good image quality. Thus, for video recording, I would say it stands as a strong performer. In backlit scenarios, the result is going to be very attractive when you have Dolby Vision and HDR enabled, although I insist, to reproduce the video as faithfully as possible, you need a special monitor. But in this case, when I'm playing it on a compatible monitor, the result is spectacular with good balance of lights and shadows without aggressive jumps in the exposure, even if it detects or fails to detect the face. And this with the ultra-wide camera, but also with the main camera we see this same performance with a very good balance of lights and shadows, and even the colors maintains a good level of saturation. Therefore, it truly provides excellent recording quality in these environments that are incredibly complex. When using the telephoto camera, we will observe the same behavior, balancing lights and shadows effectively, even with HDR turned off. In any case, we also notice good image quality, although now it does not fully utilize 100% of the capabilities of this device. However, this is a format that remains compatible with other devices, even if they lack HDR displays. Regardless, with all three cameras, we observe excellent performance with nothing out of the ordinary to highlight. Generally speaking, it performs excellently at night, and the outcome is quite positive when HDR is utilized, as it provides significantly more illumination to the darker areas. Although I must emphasize what you are viewing is a converted video, but when you view the original video, it can appear even more spectacular. The ultra-wide camera may come to suffer a bit just like the main camera, with slight noise and grain present, but the image is quite realistic. That is, it does not give exaggerated or extra light. And note how even if there is a light source present in the frame, we still see a good image quality, although it comes to stand slightly overexposed unlike the photograph. But I think in video it does a good job, competing well with the high-end. Now you are observing the identical scene, but with HDR turned off. The image quality remains positive overall. However, the darker areas might not receive as much illumination as they would if we viewed it with HDR on. Although in the sections where no light source is visible in the frame, we actually notice even better quality since there is less noise. Therefore, I believe it is advisable to enable HDR when there are illuminated areas within the frame. Otherwise, it is generally advisable to disable HDR. Stabilization will also be beneficial, especially with the ultra-wide camera, where we usually find the optimal stabilization because of the lens's width. This means that even when walking or running, you achieve a good stabilization level. For action scenes using the main camera, stabilization is also quite effective, particularly if you are walking. However, if you start running, the movements might become slightly more pronounced due to the wide lens. It can adjust the focus of a lens that's not as wide but still maintains high quality. Finally, with the telephoto camera, if you're recording something distant even while walking, there's a good level of stabilization. Obviously, the closer the objects, the more movement is noticeable, but it offers excellent image quality. Also, remember as an extra super stabilized mode that supports HDR recording, enhancing the experience, especially with the action scenes when you are running. Although honestly, I did not notice a huge difference between using or not using the action mode, which is additional. With both, we see an excellent result. However, obviously for scenes with lots of action and speed, it is recommended to use this additional stabilization. It provides very positive results with any of the three lenses. Regarding the focus, note that the main camera performs well. It is capable of adjusting the camera's focus in a very fast and efficient manner. The focus is sufficiently fast and remains stable, although this can vary depending on different factors like the lighting conditions. However, it can still focus well from close range. Overall, I find it to be a positive experience. In fact, the ultra-wide camera will also feature autofocus, allowing for close focusing, and the telephoto camera includes autofocus as well. However, you need to maintain a sufficient distance for the focus to be effective. So this camera is not so recommended for recording small objects. Regarding the zoom, it notes that it can be increasing smoothly, and if you notice the change between one camera and another, but mostly by the evolution in the level of detail, but in reality you do not notice a change in position. So I think it works well. The maximum zoom it supports while recording video is 18x, so it may be a little short, especially in the high end, but I think the full range is fine. And keep in mind that all of this is HDR compatible. The device also includes a portrait recording mode, but it operates in full HD. This allows you to blur the background, creating the impression of using a more professional camera. However, due to the low level of detail, the quality isn't as positive as one might hope. Fortunately, the effect is maintained, even if it stops detecting the face. Note that when I move closer or step back, the effect doesn't change. So theoretically, when from afar, the blur effect should fade, but here it looks more artificial. Fortunately, it keeps objects in focus, so you can achieve realistic results depending on the framing. And it can be useful and allows you to zoom in, though it's fully digital zoom, making the image quality simpler. The device also has a fast camera, which is stabilized, which is very positive. And it is also in 4K. The image quality looks very nice, although in this case, its slowest speed is 15x, which might be a bit too fast. But it is still useful, but where it looks much stronger is in landscape time-lapse, because it can go up to 1920x, which might even aggravate the growth of plants. So it has very good quality for this type of scenarios. In slow motion, something unusual occurs. It lets us have slow motion in full HD at 200 frames per second. Interestingly, it lacks the option for 120 frames per second, yet the image quality remains good in these scenarios. I would have loved to see slow motion in 4K at 120 frames per second, as seen on the Galaxy S25 Ultra, but that's not available here yet. You can also slow down the video to 480 frames per second. However, this will reduce the video resolution to HD only. In this situation, areas with more movement in the video will appear with poor definition or a slightly low bit rate. Therefore, it is not suitable for professional slow motion, but it can be quite useful for everyday use. As for the front camera, the image quality decreases significantly, lacking contrast, and the color becomes slightly distorted compared to, and it's not as good as what we observed on the rear camera. Therefore, it becomes very, very evident that this front camera still lacks high quality. Fortunately, it keeps good stabilization, and even in some backlight scenarios that aren't overly complex, we can still achieve a decent result. However, in backlight scenarios that are much more intense, we will notice that it tends to completely overexpose the brightest area. Additionally, keep in mind that it has a fixed focus, which reduces your flexibility. Inside, it retains color intensity effectively and likely provides an accurate color representation. However, there's minimal contrast, and there's quite a lot of noise, indicating that the image quality might not be very high. Certainly, the front camera could be a significant weak spot for this device, especially in low light conditions. See what the result would look like with HDR enabled. I think the image quality looks attractive because of the HDR compatible monitors, but in reality, again, you will notice that there is a lot of noise present, especially in the darker areas. A somewhat uncomfortable vibration effect is also generated due to the low lighting present, so I'd say it's a barely acceptable image quality. Without HDR enabled, we will see something very similar, although now the colors do not look as saturated, in fact. I believe they appear more natural compared to HDR, yet we still notice poor image quality, especially when moving around, like when there's a lot of vibration and low definition. Keep in mind that the fast camera mode is also accessible with the front camera. By default, it records in full HD, but it also allows for 4K recording. The portrait recording mode is available with this camera as well, which can provide a good effects, but once more, the resolution remains only full HD. Still, the image quality is positive because of the blur effect, especially if you don't have any objects nearby, you could somehow pass it off as a positive result. And regarding objects, note that it will do an intelligent analysis, so it's not able to detect them immediately, but if you have an object in your hand or you put your hand on it, it can come into focus. So its performance is not the most advanced possible, but I think we can still accept it as an experience. Positive. Finally, take note that it also comes with a dual recording mode, allowing you to display both the front camera and the rear camera simultaneously. It has straight corners, which might not make it look very advanced, but luckily it does permit you to move the picture in picture box, although there is a slight restriction on the right side. Notice that it maintains autofocus enabled and also keeps the zoom feature active, even though it doesn't switch between the rear lenses, but simply starts recording from the camera you had selected earlier. You can also have picture-in-picture circular if you prefer this format, with exactly the same behavior, focus enabled, and the ability to zoom up to 6 times. However, I must insist, it's still digital zoom. You can even record using a split screen mode with Excel, maintaining the same behavior. In this case, we must remind you that all these dual camera videos are recorded in full HD, so they do not display such a high level of detail. Elevated, yet they let you zoom in and out. The software includes Android 15 as the operating system and Oxygenus 15, which closely resembles Coloros and Realme UI. As mentioned, these brands are related and share many features. However, in this case, the experience feels cleaner to me because there are fewer pre-installed apps, making the operating system more appealing. Furthermore, the manufacturer provides you with 4 years of software updates, in addition to 6 years of security patches. This ensures that the device will have a solid lifespan. Although it may not be the longest in the industry, I believe it is sufficient to offer you an excellent experience. Now, let me share with you the various additions it includes at the software level, along with some extra features. For instance, you will find a comprehensive library of themes or covers available for the lock screen. Notice, for example, how we have the ability to apply some of these effects and even observe that they can detect a certain level of depth. This allows us to place some predetermined phrases or text behind us. So, I am able to select from some of the pictures that I have captured and see how I can position them wherever I want using this depth scan feature. Additionally, I have the capability to customize the watch with more detailed information, such as the step count or the current weather, and also alter the typography to my preference. I also have the traditional color picker of the system color palette that can be synchronized with your wallpaper, and the always on display function that shows you 2 fluid colors of the same clock. And plus the color picker along with some dark settings, although I wish all this color was adapting automatically a little easier. And you can also apply some effects on your photo, although in this sense you lose the depth scan. But I like the effect that you could get to achieve. Plus you can also add a level of blur this picture on the lock screen and then on the unlocked screen. You can reduce that blur effect, which will help you achieve a smoother and more visually appealing transition between the two elements. And furthermore, you can have several covers already predetermined, allowing you to change them more easily. In fact, you can also explore some other default options that are included within the system. Additionally, it comes with the traditional system color palette selector, which can be synchronized with your wallpaper. You also have the always on display function, which shows you 2 fluent or the classic style. In the fluid setting, you will observe that it attempts to synchronize with the lock screen, allowing for a very smooth and pleasant transition. However, if you prefer, you can certainly choose something more traditional. This offers a different type of drawing or information on your lock screen. It's important to note that some options are even animated. Each of these additional clocks and phrases are tied to the classic setting, meaning they won't have any form of transition with your lock screen. In this scenario, it remains as it is, on at all times, even though it lacks a schedule to set anything automatically. Therefore, I believe it is not as advanced as other devices. Additionally, we have the option to slightly customize the style of the icons if we want to use some of the default effects, or we can even personalize the way the icons will appear. We can also adopt the system's colors, although this feature is in beta, and surely some applications might still retain their traditional color. So, I haven't finished yet. I really appreciate how these sections are applied. Additionally, it features edge lighting that assists in displaying notifications. However, it does this in a very subtle manner. Personally, I would prefer a slightly brighter effect since it doesn't really make full use of the lock screen. Also, remember that you have the option to activate the magazine feature, which will show you a variety of random images. Personally, I am not a fan of it, but you do have the option to select the categories that interest you if you wish to view specific images. Each time you unlock your phone is different. Remember, it includes a gesture to slide icons down on the home screen for easier access. It's a practical and nice gesture for large devices. On the home screen, we can also access the shelf, a widget compiler for OnePlus that looks attractive. You can customize it, and it is also compatible with both Spotify and Snapchat widgets. However, developers need to adapt their widgets specifically designed for this section, which means it is separate from those widgets available for the home screen. Additionally, note that it includes a selector for the animation effect, allowing you to choose its speed and style. Furthermore, there is another additional option that enables the screen to remain on as long as it detects you are watching it. The Quick Settings panel offers flexibility in design. You can choose between a classic layout that appears on the same page or a split design. For example, if you swipe from the right side, it will display the full controls, while swiping from the left side will bring up the notifications, allowing you to change the page with a horizontal scroll. Personally, I find this new design appealing. Additionally, as a user, you have the option to customize and edit which buttons you want to appear in this panel, and also whether or not you wish for the names to be shown. This device includes its own sidebar, which serves you in various ways, such as allowing you to open applications in a floating mode. Keep in mind that you can resize these applications, and in this scenario, we will be able to open just one application at a time. Personally, I am not fond of this implementation, as I feel it lacks the versatility it should offer with these tools, although fortunately there is a pleasant transition between the applications you have minimized, and of course, you can minimize more than one application at a time. It must be mentioned that in this case, the floating view of applications is indeed compatible with YouTube. However, it is not compatible with Instagram, so it still has certain limitations. Note that it opens in full screen. From this side screen view, we can also drag apps to run them in a split screen mode. For example, you might notice here that we can having these two applications running at the same time, and if we combine it with the floating application, we could have up to 3 applications at the same time. Note that these applications do remain linked in the list of recent applications. But this sidebar also shows you access to temporary file storage functions like a kind of clipboard, and also to your recent files to drag and drop these contents, for example, in this easy way. You have the ability to drag and attach an image to an email and compatible applications. Additionally, this sidebar displays some artificial intelligence features, which I plan to discuss in another content. Moreover, it includes a feature called Live Alerts. This feature acts like a dynamic island you can observe, providing you with various options, such as a floating card. It is compatible, for instance, with the music player. Interestingly, however, it is not compatible with YouTube Music. Spotify has shown me the controls, and it's great because it not only offers traditional controls, but also suggestions. If you're listening to a podcast, you can fast forward or rewind a few seconds. It has advanced controls, and you can even choose if you want it to open just the controls or the full app. It can also display some information when you're sharing your internet connection or when you turn on the screen recorder. Even when you enable a timer, an animation will appear here. This is particularly useful, especially if you have controls. However, what I find not useful at all is the one-handed mode. Imagine trying to reach the button on the side there. The one-handed mode doesn't assist me in any way, and well, it includes some other gestures that are a bit more traditional, such as taking screenshots or drawing certain letters on the screen when it's off to quickly access applications. Additionally, it's going to feature on-air gestures, although in this instance they are limited to answering calls, making it less useful compared to other devices. There are also other gestures, like activating the screen when you rotate the device, or muting it when you flip it upside down. It also features the Zen Space, which is designed to help you relax and disconnect from your digital life. This tool will restrict absolutely all applications for the duration you specify. You can choose which apps will remain accessible and which ones will be blocked. Additionally, it includes a simple mode, which I like to call grandparent mode, that enlarges everything for easier viewing. Moreover, it offers an option to enhance your appearance during video calls and is compatible with both Teams and WhatsApp. I've also installed video calling apps like Zoom, WebEx, Telegram, and Instagram, but they don't show this compatibility. You only have a simple slider, and during a video call, this selector isn't in the sidebar or controls area. You must go to settings to adjust facial retouching, and as you can clearly see, it does not have any additional tools, unlike what we might observe in some other devices available within the gallery. Keep in mind that you can hold down on certain objects to extract them. You can even save them to the clipboard, which I mentioned to you just a moment ago. However, please note that you don't get the multitasking experience to exit this application and switch to another one to drop the content. So, there are definitely areas that need improvement. If you have the ability to add it to the editor stickers, they won't show up on the keyboard, but rather within the photo editor itself. In my opinion, this makes it not very useful for Realme, although it could potentially serve as a method for editing your photos. Additionally, you have the option to extract text. However, in this scenario, pressing and holding won't work. You must first open Google Lens and then select it. In this instance, it includes the GIFs or collage creator that we observe on other devices. So, as you come to understand, it is a good operating system, but not overly advanced. Regarding artificial intelligence, it has a very large number of options, although all of them require internet connection. So let's say it is not so advanced in terms of engineering implementation, but they give you access to all of them. In the description, I leave you a link to a video where you can learn one by one these functions because it shares them with its sister brands Oppo and Realme. You just have to know what study that is. The other official intelligence editing feature for correcting closed eyes in some photos or enhancing facial features is not available here. Additionally, other options found in different Oppo devices are missing. The summary and translation of documents feature present in the Oppo Find X Pro is also not available, nor is the intelligent loop currently found in Realme. However, the rest of the artificial intelligence functions are indeed present, such as working with document summaries, photo editing, and much more. So the suite of artificial intelligence tools is very positive as a good high-end device. With regard to security, we will find an ultrasonic fingerprint reader, an important evolution over the last generation. So it is no longer necessary to emit a light, and also the response is very fast and even supports your finger is wet, and anyway it will recognize it. It is excellent. Additionally, within the customization section, we will discover a variety of effects available when recognizing your fingerprint. This allows you to select the one that appeals to you the most. Furthermore, there is a quick launch option which enables you to configure not only special functions, such as shortcuts to system tools or a specific Telegram conversation, but also general applications. To activate this, simply press and hold your finger on the reader and then release it over the icon of the application you wish to open. We will also find facial recognition available, but it is in 2 dimensions, so it is not as secure and the same manufacturer warns. As part of additional tools, we have an intelligent hiding of notifications on the lock screen in the file manager. We find direct access to the private safe protected by your fingerprint, where you can safeguard any private file. There is also the possibility to block access to certain applications that you wish to verify using your fingerprint and to enter. Additionally, you can hide these applications from the main screen to reveal the hidden applications. You have 2 choices, either an icon on the main screen or by accessing through a special code within the phone application. Furthermore, you have the system cloner feature, which allows you to have, for example, 2 phones in one. If you unlock using the main pattern, you can enter the system that we already know. However, if you enter with a different pattern, note that it can access a secondary phone that contains other applications and files. It's essentially like having 2 phones in one device. Additionally, it integrates a kids mode, which is useful for lending the phone to a child. You can authorize which applications will be available, set time limits, and include protections like an ambient light reminder to prevent using the phone in very dark environments and reminders of poor. If they are watching from a very close distance, the cell phone is capable of providing these warnings. Additionally, it applies the blue light filter to protect the eyes. So if they want to leave the app or the phone, they won't be able to do so unless they have been authorized. All of this is because of your fingerprint protection. And it's important to note that within the parental controls, we are going to find the same setting that I was already mentioning earlier. Finally, within its security application, you will notice that it also includes a scanner to protect against any type of malware. In this case, it works in collaboration with Avast. Unlike other devices from the manufacturer, Avira does not appear as the additional engine, but that's okay. Now you have an additional level of protection to Google Play Protect, and of course you have all the Google security tools that I tell you in another video. I'll leave the link in the description if you want to know each of them, which are available on all Android devices, although in this case I do not count by default with Google Files, but you have to install it. Mode separately, but keep in mind that it comes with its own safe. Now let's take a moment to discuss the battery, which boasts a capacity of 6000 mAh. It's a dual cell battery. While it's not yet one of those advanced types using silicon and carbon, being a dual cell typically means it offers a bit less autonomy than we might anticipate when translating its capacity. To sum up, I believe the battery will perform similarly to a 5000 mAh battery. In fact, it might fall slightly short if you're demanding a lot from it, as it has a very powerful processor. However, if you demand too much from this processor, the battery will drain easily. On the other hand, if you stick to more everyday tasks, you could achieve a fairly normal autonomy, even positive. But do not expect an ultra-spectacular battery life as you might imagine with 6000 mAh. Fortunately, it has a normal saver mode that can restrict processor power to help you achieve better battery life, and it also includes a super save mode. Saving can help in emergencies by restricting things and making the device last longer. It supports 100 watts charging, which is appealing, but consider 2 things. It's sold separately and uses its own protocol. You need a compatible 100 watt superbox adapter, unlike devices sharing a power delivery standard, which can result it's a bit easier to find your charger. Additionally, even though it's a 100 watt charger, it doesn't actually use the full 100 watts. During our testing, we observed that the maximum peak was 57 watts. However, this doesn't mean it charges slowly. In fact, it performs quite well. In just 15 minutes, it recovered 47%, and in 30 minutes, it reached up to 85%. The full charge was completed in 40 minutes, so that's not bad at all. However, we have tested other 100 watt chargers that managed to charge in around 30 minutes or so. It all really depends on the battery and a lot of other factors, but don't let the number alone surprise you. Nevertheless, it does have positive fast charging capabilities. In fact, it's a plus that it features 50 watts of wireless charging, though you will need to purchase a compatible charging adapter for the SuperBot wireless charging. Additionally, it offers reverse wireless charging, allowing you to charge an accessory on the back of the cell phone. To protect the battery, it also has several mechanisms. For starters, there is a screen that shows you the current health of the battery, so you will be able to know how your battery is degrading. Also useful if you are going to buy it used. And it has an intelligent charging option to charge much more slowly if you always leave it plugged into the charger for several hours at night or at another time. Additionally, it features a charging lock at 80%, which is beneficial if you tend to keep it plugged in continuously. Another protective measure for the battery, which is more straightforward and enabled by default, is that once the battery is fully charged, if it remains connected to the charger, it will allow the battery to discharge to 95% before recharging it again. This cycle helps prevent the battery from deteriorating too quickly, which is certainly an advantage. Regarding connectivity, there are few complaints as it supports G and Wi-Fi 7 with high download speeds. It includes data lock to control which apps use your mobile data. It also supports eSIM, allowing you to add a data plan via QR code instead of buying a physical SIM card, which is great for travel. It also supports Bluetooth version 5.4, providing excellent stability and an impressive range. Moreover, it includes Beacon Link, a feature developed by Oppo and shared with OnePlus and Realme. This allows you to make Bluetooth calls with certain compatible devices from these brands. This feature becomes handy when you're on a trip with no mobile signal. Instead of shouting, you can make a call. Although it has a limited range, it can still be quite useful. It has NFC for mobile payments and an option to share files with iPhone. Initially, it seems compatible with AirDrop, but the iPhone needs the O Connect app. Adding a step, you can send files to an iPhone easily. It also has advanced wireless screencasting, allowing you to hide notifications. To maintain a good level of privacy or also project while the cell phone screen is off to not consume so much battery. In fact, it also has a wired projection mode, although in this case it is completely in mirror format, so it doesn't have desktop mode or anything more advanced, but fortunately it does support this. It also has Android Auto, and this USB-C port is 3.2 Gen 1. And regarding the sensors, there is some good news to share, because in addition to having an excellent variety, which also includes the pressure sensor that is typically found only in high-end models, it also features a physical proximity sensor. This is as it should be, unlike many manufacturers who tend to cut corners by omitting this sensor, so there are no complaints here. In fact, it even includes infrared capabilities, which means that along with its app, you can use it as a universal remote controller. So I think it has it all. The OnePlus ecosystem, we could say it's positive. Remember that OnePlus has its own headphones, which, by the way, are of an exaggerated quality. They are my favorite headphones, I can assure you. They also have the OnePlus Pad or OnePlus Watch. In short, they have good accessories and are growing in terms of their interaction. I think it is still not the most complete ecosystem, but it is growing. If you happen to own a Windows laptop, you will need to install Multi-Screen Connect and go through the process of configuring everything to achieve a certain level of interaction. However, this entire process requires manual installation and configuration, making it less appealing in that regard. Naturally, with the inclusion of Google services, you gain access to a wide range of features from Google, such as FastPaid, Google Drive, Google Home, and many others. Nevertheless, it's important to note that this also implies that OnePlus doesn't provide as many proprietary services, which means they don't offer their own storage solutions. The device does not use the cloud or its own developments. In this sense, we perceive a brand more dependent on Google than others. Let's go to our traditional test of opening applications to talk about performance. This device has the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, so it should have the highest possible performance. Plus, it is accompanied by 16 GB of LPDDR4X RAM, and observe more or less it took 1.4 seconds on average to open each of these applications. That is, it is an exaggerated performance. Good. This is achieved due to the excellent processor as well as the outstanding optimization of the operating system. Moreover, in this case, with 16 GB of RAM, we expect not to encounter any reboots when switching between various applications. Apparently, that expectation holds true as the device remains very fluid and agile. Indeed, that performance can definitely become one of the strongest and most attractive aspects of this device. Notice that when you are browsing within these types of social feeds, where a lot of multimedia content is loaded, it performs very well. Also, in applications that require more graphic processing, you will observe that they function quite nicely. I do not see any kind of issues in this scenario. Furthermore, with the 16 GB of physical RAM, you will notice that it includes virtual expansion up to an additional 12 GB, which is enabled by default. One feature that I really appreciate is how it provides a visual representation through a graph, illustrating the amount of RAM each application uses. Honestly, I find virtual RAM unnecessary, especially given the substantial capacity of the physical RAM. Storage is another significant advantage, with 512 GB offering ample space for most needs. However, do keep in mind that it lacks a micro SD card slot for additional storage expansion. Now, let's conduct a test to get a better understanding of the read and write speeds of this storage, which, as you can observe, are impressively fast. The account, even though it's UFS 4.0, seems to fall slightly short compared to what we've observed in other cell phones regarding read speed. The write speed, I believe, aligns with expectations. However, let's proceed to a real-life test. Now, here we have a project, and you'll notice that it interprets HDR recorded with this device in an unusual manner, causing the colors to appear somewhat odd. But let's conduct the same test that we perform on other cell phones where we place. Export and let's measure how long it takes. The clips are recorded in K with this cell phone and they have a total duration of 1 minute. And that's it. It took about 19 seconds, showing good power, although there might have been some complications with the HDR issue. But overall, I think they have a good power level. Regarding games, note that it comes with a special application where you can see that there are fast games available. You can run them without needing to install them if you prefer not to consume. Internal storage space allowing you to install your game catalog for a great experience. Note that it provides additional tools while gaming, which we'll explore shortly, and also lets you answer calls on speakerphone. It offers a vibration mode compatible with select games, though none appear here, and includes a quick launch feature that caches games, so next time you can play on your phone. The device can automatically adjust screen resolution to prevent overheating, enhancing performance. It includes other tools I'll mention shortly. Remember, in the battery profile, you can enable high performance mode. While gaming, you'll see a profile where you can choose Pro Gamer mode. The new Spotify control is also displayed here, along with the brightness controls. Additionally, you can activate the Championship mode, which will limit many distractions or similar elements to ensure nothing interrupts you during gameplay. Furthermore, we will discover call blocking features, and there is a performance boost option available, although it is compatible only with certain specific games. You also have the option to take screenshots or record your screen, which can help you optimize the entire network flow to enhance latency. Additionally, you can improve screen responsiveness if you're particular about this aspect. Furthermore, you can lock the screen orientation and save the game in cache. Moreover, you can enable some color filters in games that support them or even change your voice in compatible games. You also have the ability to adjust the resolution, which I previously mentioned. You also have access to the CPU and GPU consumption monitor, in addition to the frame per second counter, all available in a floating form. As you can see, it offers a wide range of options. This includes an option to dim the screen while the game is downloading content, which helps to prevent the battery from draining too quickly. Additionally, we have volume control and GPU-specific settings. Thanks to it utilizing a Qualcomm Adreno GPU, this allows you to customize a wide variety of things. Although it is recommended to leave it on automatic, this device indeed offers the possibility to modify all these settings. Finally, remember that you have the ability to open applications in a floating window while you're playing, allowing you to answer a message without having to exit your game. In Call of Duty, this device by default provides the graphic quality set to very high at a maximum rate. However, we can also increase the graphic quality or raise the frame rate. That if we choose to raise the frame rate, the quality drops. So first, let's go to Pro with the graphics quality at the highest, activating all the effects that come out available, which, by the way, are a lot considering it has the Snapdragon 8 Elite. In this case, I think it was to be expected. The performance so good that we have had, so 60 frames per second on average, with a very good stability, one excellent temperature control that actually stands out quite a bit. Afterward, we prioritized the frames per second rate, and once more, it provided us with outstanding performance. We won't encounter any issues if it can reach up to 120 frames per second. Even in such a scenario, we do not notice any significant overheating. We continue to observe positive results even while recording the screen. Therefore, the performance is truly excellent. Then we played Asphalt, and it's important to note that we increased the graphics quality to the highest possible setting. We even set it to 120 frames per second, maximizing everything to the fullest extent allowed by the game. Curiously, in this particular case, it did not exceed 60 frames per second. We aren't sure of the exact reason for this limitation, but the graphics still appeared very good, maintaining good stability. In this scenario, the temperature was well controlled, which was a positive aspect. However, I would have liked to see it run at 120 frames per second to determine if it would have caused any overheating issues. It was a little too high, but for the moment, this is the performance that is quite good anyway, with impressive graphic effects. An interesting fact is that Arena Breakout, which is a game that provided us with the ray tracing graphics available on the Galaxy S25 Ultra, does not display that same setting on this device. I mention this as an interesting fact because I find it quite unusual to see ray tracing available on the Galaxy S25 Ultra and not witness it here. We then played Kark Street. Note that by default, several settings are at level 4 and one at 5. For the test, we maxed them out. Remember, this is one of the most demanding games that many devices struggle to run, and this case was no exception. It also struggled a bit, fluctuating quite a lot before stabilizing at about 50 frames per second. And when you consider the level of graphics that this game possesses, I truly believe it stands out as one of the best we've seen for running content at such a high graphical level. Although in the screen recording you might notice some frame loss that is a bit more significant, it's nothing too serious. Overall, I think it maintains a good experience, and in a way, it also confirms to us that this is one of the heaviest games we can test. Up to now, it's the only device that has been able to handle it. The game runs very smoothly and cool on the Red Magic 10 Pro, which is a cell phone that is 100% focused on gaming. Here it's worth mentioning that OnePlus, despite having some issues initially, managed to stabilize over time. However, if you record the screen, you might experience some hitches. Overall, I believe the performance of this device in this game has been quite positive. Then we went ahead and played Genshin Impact. By default, the game provides us with high graphics quality. However, for this test, we increased it to the highest possible setting, which means very high graphics quality at 60 frames per second. We also set motion blur to very high. In this scenario, once again, the performance was excellent, really impressive. We only experienced 2 very minor low peaks, which aren't significant. It's worth noting that even while recording the screen, the game runs with excellent fluidity, and what I liked was how it maintained the temperature effectively. From Kark Street, we noticed it managed the heat well, as it's one of those games that typically heats up devices a lot, similar to Genshin Impact. However, it wasn't an issue here, so the performance is quite impressive. Many games will run smoothly without any trouble. Then we played War Thunder and noticed that we had turned the graphics quality up as high as possible to set a very complicated test. Additionally, we set ray tracing to high, making it a particularly heavy test. In this case, once again, we will notice that we are not going to see 120 frames per second. For some strange reason, it is limited to 60, just as it happened with Asphalt. It seems that perhaps in a smart way, the system gives priority to controlling the frames per second to avoid extreme heating. Or something similar, as once again we observe a very smooth experience with excellent temperature control and very good graphics. So the only thing we could really complain about is that it didn't exceed 60 frames per second as we had set it. However, if the difference between 60 and 120 frames per second doesn't bother you too much, you'll have a truly excellent gaming experience. Lastly, we played Bright Memory, the heaviest game we've tested recently. Note that the graphics setting, we set the settings as high as possible, reaching up to 120 frames per second, with the shadow quality set to medium, which is actually the highest setting available. Additionally, we enabled the advanced graphics settings, including water reflections. The experience was very good overall. However, it's important to note that it still doesn't go above 60 frames per second. For some reason, it seems that OnePlus has implemented some sort of temperature control limiter or something similar, which causes this game and other games to run with limitations. This should definitely be noted, that when recording the screen, even though we might witness some moments where the device could lose more fluidity, causing you to see some lags that aren't very pleasant, if you don't record the screen, the experience tends to be somewhat more fluid. It's important to remember that the frames per second graph you see on the screen was captured during a different monitoring stage than the screen recording. So that's just a piece of information you should keep in mind. Overall, the performance of this device is really quite impressive. What I found most appealing about it is the excellent temperature control it offers. However, this might be at the expense of the refresh rate, because other devices such as the Galaxy S Ultra can reach up to 120 frames per second in this type of content and others, even though they experience a significant increase in heating. Personally, I would prefer if this device could push its capabilities to the maximum limit allowing the user to manually reduce the rate if desired. The performance is quite impressive, particularly due to the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor. Applications launch extremely quickly, and games will provide a satisfying experience with a slightly cooler performance. This is evident in the gaming experience offered by this device. To sum up, we are looking at an excellent high-end device, without any doubt. It boasts a high-end design, a premium display, and a mid-range front camera, which is an area for potential improvement. The rear cameras are high-end as well. However, considering the price, it might be worthwhile to consider the Oppo Find X Pro as a compelling alternative to this device, if you are looking to. You can invest a bit more money and get a significantly better long-range zoom. Even if you don't, it still takes good photos. The video recording capability is positive, offering excellent software features with a comprehensive suite of artificial intelligence. The battery life is satisfactory and the charging experience is good, even though it doesn't come with a charger, which is a bit annoying. And the performance is excellent, particularly because of the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor. Applications open very quickly and games will run with great performance. The quality is good, but for some reason, certain games do not display ray tracing. I'm unsure if this is for optimization purposes or another reason. However, this same processor does show ray tracing on other phones. You will also notice it prioritizes staying a bit cooler, which means it sometimes cannot reach up to 120 frames per second on the phone. Despite this, I believe it delivers a very good performance, and the overall experience with the device is quite positive. Hopefully you can find it at a lower price, 20,000 Mexican pesos, making it more appealing as it's only online where prices are usually lower. We've reached the end of this video. If you liked it, let us know, and we'll see you next time.